Hola community, welcome to BlenderToday Live 260. We are almost halfway through the year. We are 1 week away from Blender 5.0 Alpha, 4.5 Beta, and we are close to Annecy next week. In a couple of weeks, we are close to the closing date of the Blender conference submissions. Also, we're close to so many things. The light is gonna be all over the place. It's the Netherlands, it's cloudy and windy, so brace yourself for changes in the weather. You know what has changed? Blender has changed a lot, but let's do a few announcements here because so much has happened. First, we have the Blender survey, but on a moment. Annecy, as I mentioned, if you are going to Annecy, to the animation festival in Annecy, please register for our in-person community event. There is a picnic, I believe, and go to conference.blender.org, submit presentation, or if you have an entry for the Susan Awards, also make sure that you submit yours. What else? Let's see. I mentioned this, that, and what else? Oh, another announcement that the studio, Blender Studio, has early access of their video game, finally, pre-release. So it's in, well, pre-release, it's early access. So if you have the source code even, pre-release of the build, so you can actually get the build. Nice. This early access, so you need a subscription to the Blender Studio to support the team and make them available, make it possible to make more games and more projects like this. And that's it. New video, like also the production logs are free, by the way. You can watch them anytime, and it's like an office that comes every other week in the Blender Studio YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. And that being said, all right, let's cover a bit of the Blender survey. We're gonna talk about what's new in Blender. I have a list of all the features, as always, over 400 commits this time. But let's look at very quickly at the survey. So if you go to survey.blender.org, you will see the results of the survey that happened last year in October 2024. And this is important because it's important to remember that this happened in October of last year, because some of the results are related to like EV Next, and a lot has happened since then in making it better. But overall, lots of people are happy with Blender. That's so nice. Also, some people are unhappy, but like very unhappy with Blender, and it's important that they can say that. In terms of source and demographics, most people find out through blender.org channels, which is important. It's also good to know. Between 19 and 35-ish, 40. I'm actually on this now, on 35 to 45, 36 to 30, 45. So I'm part of the 17%. In terms of country, Blender is pretty global. Like half of the visits and the users of Blender that filled up this form, they also are not in the top 10, which is nice. Most people are from Europe, language English, although this was only in English, so this was only shared in English, so kind of makes sense. But it's important that also people use the UI in English and to know that. But we made sure when we made this page, we made sure that if you right-click translate, that everything translates. Like, well, the questionnaire, that it, like all the questions are translatable, like they are accessible for the system, the browsers to translate. La libertad de crear. Okay, no, I just want English. Many people care about the Blender is the freedom to create, the philosophy behind Blender, but not that many actually. Like they don't believe, like some people, 2%, 100 people don't think that Blender supports the freedom to create, which is insane to me because it's open source. It's nothing more free than that, right? Anyways, okay, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but it's pretty interesting. Most people come from 3ds Max, or Blender was their first 3D software. More than half of the people were Blender the first 3D software, and many of them are just started in like half of them almost, a quarter actually, from the very few recent versions. Super interesting. News come from YouTube. Yes, nice. Problem solving, frequency. Okay, I'm not gonna go through every question, but it's pretty interesting. Lots of people use the LTS versions, the long-term support, and only the LTS. That's crazy. So they are in 4.2 or 3.6, and they're about to move to 4.5 LTS. So that is also very interesting as a designer, UI, in general, development involved person, to think of LTS releases as those that most people are going to jump in. So you could say, okay, 4.3, 4.4 are two releases where you can be a bit more experimental in adding things to that will be polished through 4.4 and 4.5. And then, but if it's going to be in the LTS, and you really have to make sure that it's good. I don't know if having even next in the LTS, in the 4.2 LTS was smart decision. Probably not, but otherwise it would have been waited for 4.3. Yes. Anyways, add-ons. Lots of people use Cycles. Yes, I did. When this was made, Cycles was still an add-on, not Wrangler. Well, Cycles is still an add-on that you can disable, but nobody goes out of their way to disable it. Most people are on film and animation, although it's pretty close. Graphic design, game development, advertisement, and VFX, almost the same. It's interesting. I would have expected more VFX people. Most of them work by themselves or in a small team. Also interesting. They use Blender with Krita, with Substance. Lots of people use Substance and Photoshop. You can see the connections between the graphs. Also very interesting. And most people don't even know what version control is. So I don't think I don't know if we're gonna have the same questions for this year. What do you think? Should we have the same questions for other for this year? Same questions, or restructure some of them? We should maintain most of them because that's how you create trends, right? How you check on trends. Half of the people that use Blender, they actually make money with it, which is also not bad. Not bad. Either they're employed, they have their own business, or in some other ways. They're artists making assets. They spend a lot of money in mostly in assets, as we can see, and software. Not bad. They contribute to Blender via donations or back reports. That's very important because that's how Blender keeps being stable and financially viable. 40% they cannot afford to donate. Some others are not donating because they just choose not to, which is very interesting. Like 31% of users choose not to donate to Blender. Not that they cannot afford it, they choose purposely not to donate. That's very interesting as a Blender user, right? Although I could say that too, right? I use other open source software, and I maybe could afford to join like with €1, 5, 10, whatever. But it's not that I don't choose to, it's just that I don't use it enough maybe. But I wouldn't fill up a survey now that I think of it. Most people donate once or join the development fund. This is also very interesting. A lot of people, 23%, so 23% of the users that fill up the form, the survey, they really believe that they are donating to Blender, they're contributing to Blender development, they're donating via marketplaces like Blender Market, like those things. And it's not the most efficient way of donating, and that there are so many fees in between, things that it's up to the developer creator, the add-on creator, to choose how much money is that going to go into the development fund. So it's not up to you. So as a user, when you buy an add-on that says they will donate to Blender, that's not, I would rather just buy an add-on that doesn't donate to Blender and donate myself, like separately. It's very interesting. Then there is a lot of feedback. Some people missed the BlenderToday show, which is very nice. And to hear, we are back. And that's it. I mean, you can see the results by yourself. You can download the whole JSON files, or you can even get some feedback But this is the survey. We're gonna have one again in around October at the same time. Should it be longer? This was 2 weeks, open for 2 weeks. Should we have more time? 7,000 people. I think it's a goodish number. Like after a few thousand, you already get to see some trends. Okay, let's see what we are here for. How's everyone doing in the chat? I'm reading you, by the way, here. So we're live, streaming live. These videos also get uploaded to videos.blender.org, by the way. If you're not on YouTube, you can watch them elsewhere. Okay. Oh, what I didn't talk about this is that the code blog, since we talked last time, there has been 3 new blog posts. Frame node improvements, projects update, and NPR. Many people were asking on NPR last time, and here you have your blog post by Clement to describe how the project is going, and then every other project that was planned for this year, or start at least to begin this year, has its own section here where you can go and see what's going on. So what happens with UV Sync? Well, it's actually almost done, and that with every other project. So make sure you check the animation. Let's start with animation as usual. The action constraint has a new mode called replace. So nice. It adds a new one, bringing it in line with most other constraints already in Blender. So the action constraint didn't have a replace. Interesting. Cool. Display as for bones is now, they can be overridden per bone. So it's no longer a setting that you have defined in the armature anymore. Like if it's sticks or octahedral or B-bones or envelopes or wire, now you can say, okay, make the whole armature in sticks, but I want some of them to be octahedral. Super nice. To enable this, you go to the bone viewport display, displays as, and change the default, which is armature defined, to whatever you want to override it with. So nice. This one was by Aras, I believe. Yes, Aras, which is also now in the animation module. It's a multi-module person. More modes. The select grouped operator in pose mode now has more modes similar to in edit mode. You can now select children, immediate children, parents, and siblings. This is probably the Shift G. I didn't compile Blender, or maybe I think I did compile it yesterday. So I'm gonna have open Blender just in case here to test a few things. All right, so let's see over here. Okay, so let's see. Select group in pose mode. I guess that is in. I just want to see this because otherwise I'm giving false. Oh, there you go. Shift G. Children, immediate children, parents, and siblings. Nice. This brings it in line with edit mode, I believe, which has a few more even. Prefix, suffix. Oh, why can I select by the same prefix or not in pose mode? Would make sense, right? Or you will use selection sets for that. Okay, next. Playhead snapping. So playhead is the current frame indicator, that line in the timeline editors. The snapping to that playhead now has its own popover. So it's an option that you open, and then you have snapping, snap distance, and the target as well. Is that how it looks currently? Yeah, playhead. So in, I guess, graph editor. Yes. Oh, it's ugly. I need to do a pass before the release. Like this should be its own. Wait, can you change the snap distance? Why? It should be grayed out when this is off, I think. And this could be inlined and just called snap, I think. But anyway, so what happens if I turn on snap, and then it will snap to keyframes? So if I have a keyframe here and a keyframe there, I would expect this to snap, right? 2 frames, keyframes. Okay, those are the, wait, these are the frames here. That's nice. Is there a snap to, what is the default? Reset to default value, 20 pixels. It's in pixels. I guess it's because of the absolute view of the 2D view of the editor. Nice. Okay. Next. We're done with animation. All right. Next is assets. There's 2 changes in asset. One in the assets themselves. The metadata operators now are available in the context menu. So when you right click, you will see these options. The edit metadata, preview image, save changes, and revert to assets. These were not available there. So now they are. And when you have the essentials library, you cannot edit them. So it made sense that you wouldn't see them, but also it's kind of strange to not have these options when you expect them. So I think it's better to show them grayed out, and then on mouse over you can tell in the tooltip, it's like, hey, this is not available because of this and that. So now it is. Edit metadata, preview image, save changes, and revert to asset are available when using a user library, like your own library. Then, speaking of thumbnails, you can now create them via a screenshot. The operator works as if you were like in preview, and then you go to the dropdown, capture, screenshot. Blah, is this how it is? Or is this too old? Is it capture? Oh no, it doesn't, it's not capitalized. That's my fault. I think I reviewed this and I didn't, no, I didn't. No one. Oh yeah, Julian for the UI team. Okay, we need another thing to fix before the release. It is not capitalized. It should be title case. But the feature itself is pretty nice. You select it from the list. You draw a box where you wanna capture, and that's it. That will capture it. It would be nice maybe when drawing that to have snapping points to square or 16:9, or what is the most recommended, maybe square, or at least it could show somewhere the coordinate. Does it show? It could, when you scale that, it could tell you the size, so at least you know that you're making it square or not. That would be pretty nice. It takes whatever it's in the viewport. So if you have overlays, or if you have if you're in shading mode or matcaps, it will take whatever you have there. It's a screenshot basically. Super nice. It looks like one of those things that some add-ons add, but Blender doesn't have natively, and now it has. Nice. Okay. Then there's many changes in attributes, kernel, build, CMake, cleanups, lots of cleanups. Blender is very clean, as we can see, until we reach the compositor. To me, one of the most like game changer areas in Blender 4.5, and together with the quality of life changes that were done to the node editor, I think this is going to be an amazing release. 4.5 is going to be one that I think people are going to stick with longer than previous. I think more than 4.2, or more than, well, 3.6 doesn't have EV Next and doesn't have Grease Pencil 3, so maybe some people will stick, but 4.5 I think is going to be a massive release. For example, there is 2 new nodes this week. One is called relative to pixel, and it's mainly added so it can be, let's see, where's the picture here. So it can be used when converting previous setups. So what some nodes used to have hard-coded inside of the node, now those values have been made into inputs, into sockets. So sometimes you need to convert, okay, from this picture relative to the pixel, then adjust the size. So that is more future-proof. If you scale, if you change the resolution of your scene, you're not dealing with pixels. You're dealing with actual relative info. Super nice. This patch adds a new relative to pixel node. The node converts values that are relative to the image to in pixels. It is useful to use relative values in nodes that take pixel values. For example, the Kuwahara node, also the pixelate, I think is set on pixels, right? Super nice. The node can operate on float and 2D vector values, and the options are per dimension, x, y, greater, smaller, and diagonal. Relative to the diagonal of the image, relative to the greater dimension, or the smaller dimension. So flexible, nice. The other new node in town is called image coordinates. And as you can imagine, these are the coordinates: texture, normalize, and pixel. Super nice. Image info, isn't that info also? The coordinates? Or it's more like texture coordinates. Should it be called texture coordinates? To be consistent with the rest. I learned about these things way too late to give my feedback because the node is already there. Okay, next is not a new node. It's just there are new outputs in the image info node. It's called dimensions output, and it adds the dimensions to the image info. So the same picture that I saw just now, but with the dimensions on top. And dimensions, I guess, is going to be a 2D vector of x and y. And what is resolution then? It's resolution by scale. There is a much more complex relation between transform and dimension. That's because there is rotation involved and because transformations are centered. Okay. Well, we have the manual for this. Okay, things I can understand. Search in the compositor and the node editor in general is so much better. For example, you can now search inside of glare types. You can search for bloom, ghosts, streaks, fog glow, and simple start in the search menu. So you can do Shift A and bloom, like Shift A, bloom, and now you get bloom. Super nice. Then filter types also. You can now search for filter types directly, and you will get the node that you were looking for. So in this case, it's the filter, I guess, is going to be Sobel, diamond, sharpen, etc. So if I search for diamond, I'm going to get diamond, sharpen, neat, all these types. So Kirk's, shadow, Laplace, and others. You can also link search to get those entries. So if I want to connect this to a Kirsch, it's probably someone very smart, and I'm butchering their last name. Kirsch. There you go. Okay, next. In terms of UI, user interface of the compositor, we now have, by default, this is one of those small things that you're not going to notice until I tell you. Is, well, you probably noticed, because who hasn't run into this? You open Blender, the compositor, and then the nodes are somewhere in the ether. They are covered by this, by the sidebar, or just not center aligned. Now they are. Now the nodes are going to show up in the center, nice as you would expect it. Neat. Then the viewer node, it's by default added to the compositor. So since the beginning of time, so the compositor was added in a long time ago. When was it? 2005, 2006 for 2005 probably for Elephant's Dream. The compositor has a viewer since day one, but it was never added. So but most of the time you want to have a viewer. I think back then it wasn't added because Blender wasn't very smart into computing or skipping computing things that wouldn't be used, but now it is. So welcome. The default now has 3. Actually, I haven't even noticed myself. Like, use nodes, and now it's here. Nice. It's one of those things that you just don't notice, and that's a good thing, because it means like you were either expecting it or it's just very well done and it blends in. Another thing was added this week. Habib has been on fire lately. It's the image editor now shows the render size and the image size of what you're working on. When you have the viewer node, now you have this, which is awesome. You have the like a passepartout, like you can see like the cameras. If you have a picture that is too large, for example, and the viewer node is only on one section of that, or your composite has one section of that, you will see it here. And this is an overlay. It's called text info. In the same way that the 3D viewport has a text info, now the image editor has text info. Super nice. It's something. It's one of those things that you would expect. Gizmo for split node. The split node is a node that has been, it used to be called split viewer, and now it's just split. And this now has a gizmo. So when you select the node, you will see a line in the back that you can just drag and drop instead of fiddling with the factor. Now you can change it. Would be nice to have a way to rotate it as well, because now you can choose X, Y. Maybe you could do a thing, or you could show a rotate. Maybe. I think we have many nodes that have gizmos. Are you bothered by these gizmos? Like, do you need a toggle for them? The same way we have a toggle for in the layout gizmos. These are gizmos, and also the gizmos for the camera, for example, they are, or the lamps, they have an option to be on and off, so they don't get in the way. Does the compositor need one? For example, if you have one of those box masks, for example, maybe it gets on the way, right? You're done with the box mask. You don't want to show it anymore. Should it be an option in the node, or should it be just an option in the here? If you don't have the backdrop, although you wouldn't see them, but still. Next. Avoid clamping after HSVA conversion. This is just something internal, just to, if you had issues with it before, the GPU compositor now clamps after this conversion, the same way that the CPU compositor does. The crop node options are now inputs, in the same way that it's been done for. I wish they would take a screenshot of this just to see it. Yeah, I mean, you compiled already, right? I might as well add a screenshot. And Git makes it easy. You just like do a thing and then paste. Anyways, crop node has options. Color balance also has options, and I bet there is no screenshot for this. So I will, no, there's not. So let me go here and color balance, and bam. Oh, yes, I guess this becomes like a, yeah, this changed a lot. Color balance. I guess, yeah, we don't have the toggle anymore. We don't have this. Oh, this changed a lot. But it's an image, right? It's an input, so it makes sense. How else would you? Yeah, wow. A screenshot for this would have been very easy. I don't know if you remember the other one, but it is very different. So if I run Blender 4.4, yeah, you remember, it was the one with the 3 spheres. Blur node also has inputs instead of No picture. Let's see, blur. Separable. Use faster approximation by blurring along the horizontal. Did we have this option before? Extend bounds, yes. Size, yes. I think we should have some kind of default size, right? What would you add a blur node that has no effect at the moment you use it? How do you do relative? I guess. Separable. Use faster blurring along the horizontal and vertical directions independently. I guess they... Bah. And also this is X and Y, right? This could show a subtype. By the way, this seems to be the new 2D vectors sockets, which I'm gonna talk about just now, actually. So this change is actually from the node editor section, because it's been added to the whole node system in Blender. 2 new socket types, 2D and 4D vectors. Before, Blender would have way too many vectors inside, even though you would see like X and Y, for example, for blur, blur in X and Y, or anything that is 2D, you would only need most of the time like 2 vectors, X and Y, for example. Well, Blender internally would actually have more, and that means more memory. Now Blender has a specific socket type, which is a 2D vector, which is gonna lead into more memory, less memory consumption, so more memory efficiency. Only when you need it. Super nice. The clamp node, the highlights in the glare have been renamed to clamp instead of suppress. The clamping of the highlights. It was called suppress at some point, and we don't use that word anymore. I think it's easy to understand, it's suppress, but the Blender's language, we always use clamp. Maybe it's not what other software uses, but as I always like to say, that Blender is for Blender users. If we already use clamp in other places for cycles, highlights clamping, for example, we might as well use that word everywhere. And then at some point, maybe rename it to whatever industry standard is. But let's do it all at once, not change some parts as suppress, sometimes as clamp, sometimes as something else. Other software uses clamp. Nice, thanks. Give me gizmos. People want gizmos. Okay. The classic 3 spheres. Yes, a classic that made me confused when I first used it. Yeah, but I kind of liked. It reminds me of like editing software, like DaVinci Resolve or something. When you open DaVinci Resolve in the color grading section, is like you feel in a spaceship. You feel like you have those one of the devices that they sell. Okay, we're almost done. There's one option that actually got removed. The relative option from the translate node has been removed. This will be superseded. It is superseded by the relative to pixel node. And I guess this will be done through node, so through versioning. Yes, indeed. That is, whenever you want to know if, is Blender going to handle this for me? Remember versioning. So in the changes in the code itself, there is usually a file called versioning, in this case 4.5, which means that when you open Blender in 4.5 of one of these nodes that you were using that option, Blender is gonna like tuck in the relative to whatever new setup needs to be done. In this case, the relative to pixel node right before the translate node. Okay, time to move on. There are other changes, of course, but I will... Well, there is one change that they renamed the compositor node 3 to compositing node 3, which I hope is not going to be the final name, because we don't have, like, materials are materials. They are not shading node 3 or geometry nodes. It's a geometry nodes, not geometry nodes node 3. So I think it should be just a compositor, or Node 3 is implied. You're looking at it, right? Okay, time to move on to cycles. Bunch of changes. CUDA 11 has supported, apparently not like it's supported. It's not mean that it's the minimum. Embrace 4.4 also is now the minimum. And adaptive subdivision. This is the one I wanted to mention, because if you have noticed different, there is a bug report here, where apparently Blender 4.4 will render subdivisions consistently every time, but in 4.5, so in the alpha version, sometimes it would split it will triangulate in different ways. Even like render after render, it would triangulate differently, which you don't want that, especially if you're running an animation. So this has been fixed now, and triangulation should be stable in cycles. Although if you only use stable releases, you probably haven't even noticed this. I hope you haven't noticed this. Okay, now this starting this week, like with the latest changes, Blender, I hope you feel that Blender should feel a bit snappier when you open it for the first time and the remaining times. Lots of work has been done through Eevee, Workbench, Draw Engine to kind of get rid of the stutter. You know, open Blender and then there was always something happening. It was like waiting way too many seconds, or you switch a tab and it's like it takes time to load. A lot of work was done into either parallelizing those jobs, or making sure that you only need what you only load what you need at the time. I think Blender at some point was loading way too many shaders in advance for a cube, you know, for the default, and this should make it more responsive. For example, this one. Wait, no. Here, this one. Draw Engine. Add a new GPU context for rendering preview jobs. So this means that there is a new context somewhere else that can do the previews. Previews as in the material previews, for example. When you go to the material list on your mesh, you will see these little previews. They all have its own rendering basically inside. And that was happening in the same context as the rest of the interface, which means that every time you change a shader, it will update the preview, but it will stutter the rest. Now this is split. So cool. Its own separate thing. I think there was one of the things that was annoying me the most. Like I almost wanted to go look into the code and remove the materials altogether. No, just don't show me material previews. They're useless anyway. They're like this size. To me, not that's not. Anyway, they fixed it by making it smart and only render in the background, parallelized. What else? Depth graph. There is a huge performance improvement when parenting objects. Apparently, some of this was happening a bit too not very smart, because the changes. It seems when you were parenting, for example, 400 objects in a 4000 objects file, it would take up to 10 seconds. In this test, in this computer, by this developer, Carnaval. The fix that they made it so now it's just tens of milliseconds. So from 10 seconds to milliseconds. That's huge. Yeah, literally huge in time. So this will save so much time. I hope this person continues to improve other areas. Maybe there's low-hanging fruits of these kind of things where you just doing things in a very slow way, or like maybe when they were testing it, when they implemented it. Although when they implemented parenting, which is very basic, probably there wasn't even there weren't even ways of making this smarter. Anyways, super nice. Welcome change. In draw mode, use vector set for generic attributes. So performance improvements by hands which brings an 8% increase in a test file with 30,000 cubes. Always welcome. And here's what I was talking about before. These are the updates for Eevee. And they are all related, well, all but one related to optimization. First, optimize upfront specialization. Many of the upfront specialized variants were not needed. So now this is optimized. And this is noticeable on OpenGL mainly. But are you still using OpenGL? That's so yesteryear. Vulkan, if you are on Linux or on Windows, switch to Vulkan, please, because that's how you get the benefits from the new system. And if you find any issues, you can report them and then make Vulkan better. So the sooner Vulkan is stable, the sooner we can get rid of OpenGL. Maybe it's gonna be like Blender 6, but next. By the way, Blender 6, Blender 5, 5.1, 5.2, and like all the milestones, they are already there. So do you know when 5.2 is gonna come out? Well, it's gonna come out on the 14th of July 2026, in the middle of the World Cup. Nice. And 5.3 next year in November. Yep, we are in the future. Not yet, we are here, almost 5.0. Okay, next. Let's talk about all the performance improvements. Eevee, film, reduce amount of compilation stutters at startup. Yep, this is one of those things also that were getting stuck in the, when you open Blender, when Eevee was trying to calculate film and shaders that didn't need. The other stutter was caused by film specialization in the preview render. Then ray tracing. Eevee was pre-calculating some shaders for ray tracing even before you turn on ray tracing. So that's no longer the case. If you have ray tracing enabled, then, which is super nice, because then you open Blender and you know that the default is without ray tracing, so it's not gonna load those unneeded settings. Although, question for you. Would you will you turn on ray tracing in Eevee by default? I think Andrew Price mentioned that, Blender Guru mentioned that on his video on Eevee. Super nice video, by the way. If you haven't seen it, then it's very goes so like in depth on using Eevee to pretend that it cycles. And there he suggests that ray tracing should be on. I disagree, because Blender should be fast by default for most people, and most people don't have fast computers. But yeah. Next. Default startup speedup. Just very clear from the name, low-hanging fruit optimizations for improving the default startup time. Something that used to take 7 seconds to start went down to 4 seconds on Clement's system. And to me, it's actually even like it feels faster. Like I close Blender and then I open it, and then boom, it's just immediate. So pretty happy with this. I just hate that Blender on a Mac, it always asks you if you can access like the system if you close it. Okay, let's go back. FFmpeg ARAS made things as faster again. High bitrate, our HDR video and decoding in using FFmpeg, so in Blender, in the sequencer in general, is now faster because ARAS made it faster. So basically, videos that are higher than 8-bit are decoded into floating points formats, and the speed up is multi-threading. So something that used to take 21 frames per second, like used to be going at 21 frames per second, now it's 31 frames per second. So pretty neat. Okay, let's move on. Whole bunch of fixes. Vulkan fixes, GPU, more Vulkan. Pretty happy to see Vulkan being Improve. Hey, Oscar Blumber, who are you? And thank you in advance for improving. Carnival, that's the same user as before. Carnival, nice. Thank you, Carnival. Oscar. Next. Whole bunch of fixes. So many fixes. Crashes. And in GPU, we have so many changes as well and fixes, but there is one in particular I wanted to highlight, which is the Make Shader Specialization API Thread Safe. Again, optimizations, multi-threading, shading. We want that. Everyone wants that. Let's switch to geometry nodes. We have a few updates. Actually, some of them are, there are more updates in the node editor section. Geometry nodes add a new node, set grease pencil softness node. This is how solid or faded the edges of a grease pencil stroke is controlled by an attribute called softness. And there's a video we can look at here. And I drink some mate. Ooh, it's like a... Isn't that blur? What is softness even? What does it mean with softness? It's not blurring then. It's maybe softness? So like a soften filter? Is that a not involved in this enough to even know what it is, but to me it looks like either blur or a soften, like an effect. So it could be even, I don't know. Or are they porting the effects to nodes? I don't know. Don't trigger evaluation when adding a new frame. Yep. So geometry nodes was recalculating the whole system when you added a frame, as in a frame node. So a layout node. Any layout node, like reroutes or frames, shouldn't recalculate the whole setup. Initial support for volume grids in function nodes. This is the very initial implementation of volume grids inside of geometry nodes, function nodes. So it looks like this. So you have a grid, density grid, and then you can control it, change it. You can pass around grids, volume grids. Nice. Reduce bake node weight in link track search. Oh yes, bake was when searching for value, the option for bake will show up first, and that shouldn't be the case because usually you want maybe a value node, and that should be gain weight. Nice. The replace string and slice string nodes now have aligned sockets, super tidy. And oh, this is super nice as well. The undo, like the redo panel when using node tools now supports panels. So like this. So you make a change, you run the operator, and now you have panels. This is super cool. I quite like it. So now we have panels everywhere. Why don't we still have panels in popovers? Why are popovers so special that they don't support? And what I mean is these popovers, like motion track and viewer now. I think this is sub panel, and they could be collapsed. It's just Blender doesn't support them. Maybe that would be a good target for 5.0 of like a paper cut, almost. Next. That's it with geometry nodes, actually. Let's switch to grease pencil. There's a new option that allows you to filter modifiers by layered groups. So you may be familiar with the filtering or the influence, limit the influence to layers. Fine, that's great. But now you can also do it to layer groups. So that's nice. It should say layer group, not group though. Is it the case? But I'm not gonna. Okay, maybe modifier layers, layer group. Yeah, it says group. It shouldn't say a group, it's layer group. Because if one day we have object groups, then it can conflict. So I'm gonna leave this. I should have. Anyway, I'm gonna leave that open just as a reminder so I can go back to that. Next, I/O. In I/O, Aras made it so the colada entry in the menu is more prominent. It's first. The menu items should be last because it's deprecated. Colada is deprecated in 4.5 and probably removed in 5.0. So add the deprecated to Colada tooltips. The old one. This is the old guy. Speaking of guys, key map. There is a new change in the key map for the 3D viewport. So now, if you have a mouse that supports horizontal scrolling, so I have this mouse. This is an Logitech MX Master, and it has this regular scroll, and it also has a horizontal scroll, which is super nice. So this one, and then this is horizontal scrolling, which is so convenient for timelines, for websites, for anything. And now Blender supports it. So if I am video editing, for example, I can go left or right with the scroll bar. Then 2D views also can scroll sideways with this. And also now, since that commit that I just mentioned, also the viewport, you can go left and right. So neat. But it's only if you have an horizontal scroll wheel. Then this is a weird one. Lights. We don't usually see many updates to lights. It's usually Eevee, cycles, not lights in general. However, there are updates, which I ran into just by accident the other day. So first one, remove units from light power. What? Remove units. Yep. So yeah, there is no units now. There is a temperature. You can specify it in temperatures. So, okay, this has been causing some confusion because it is radiometric units rather than photometrics, not lumens, for example, which is how real-world lights are typically specified. With the addition of exposure and normalize options, this also becomes less clear. So now there is no more this kind of power. I think they made a typo here. Radiometric P power? Or is P power a thing? Yeah, I think it's a typo. Okay. So there is power now, and you can choose also. Let's see the other changes. Temperature. You can set the color in temperature, supported by Cycles, Eevee, Hydra, USD, Colada, and FBX. You have a new option. Why? I'm not a big fan when developers use a themed Blender because you don't know if what you see is what you will get, right? It's hard to see. Okay, but here we have it. You have your light, turn on temperature, and then set it. So no more need for setting up a black body node in the node editor. Now you can just, well, especially because Eevee didn't support black. It doesn't support node setups yet, unlike Cycles, which does. So pretty welcome. What else? Exposure. There is a new setting called exposure. So you can adjust the exposure per light, and you can also normalize the power as well. Neat. What a big separator between these settings. I don't think we needed this big of a separator. Okay, very nice. You can, when you choose to adjust the temperature of the light, you can adjust the tint. So you can give it a little bit of tint plus the temperature. And when you not have that enabled, it will say color. So this is a bit confusing though, that you can have this setting off, and it's the first setting in the list. But I guess it looks ugly also the other way around. If you have first color and then when you press a button that the option on top changes, yeah, you don't want that. And finally, the normalize option that I just mentioned, also supported by Cycles, Eevee, Hydra, USD, and Colada, thanks to Quentin Sanz. Neat. Next, we have a change in Linux. Fetch libraries with make update. So if you're on Linux and you compile Blender, when you run make update, you will get this. It's gonna fetch the libraries for you. Then, okay, are you ready? Because Blender is now industry standard. Okay, not really, but it is adhering to one more standard, which is the Open PVR Surface. What is it? It's a like a spec that Blender now follows for exporting Principled BSDF in Material X and Open PVR surfaces. So this is compatible with the rest of the world basically. So when you export Blender, it's gonna have, instead of standard surface in the attributes, it's gonna say Open PVR, base weight, base diffuse roughness, specular weight, base metalness instead of metalness. So hey, Blender, playing better with others. Nice. Let's switch to mesh. There is one change, but a big one. Rewrite face corner normals calculation. This is a change that I know, or is it one of the many that Hans wanted to do for a while, which is a rewrite, a refactor internal. In this case, is a face corner normals calculation, which comes with a pretty big performance improvement. It's overall more than twice as fast to calculate face corners normals. On a test file with custom normals, I observed an overall FPS increase of 2.5 times. So it went from 37 FPS to 95 frames per second. So nice. Next. I think we can start talking about nodes. So many changes to nodes. Where can I look at the Blender? Oh yes, I completely forgot Blender Community. I should have made a post to let's write a post with today's live stream name. I'm gonna do this live, sorry, but I can, so you can see all what I'm looking at basically. Thanks for the reminder, Chrisidian, in the chat. I'm gonna make this and boom. So Blender survey results, I'm gonna share this in there. It's on Blender Community. BlenderToday. Okay, so now you can follow along. Next, let's talk about nodes. And this is node editor in general. So many quality of life improvements since then. First, a new node called BitMath Node. It's a new node that is used across the other editors, and it supports the following operations: and, or, XOR, not, shift, and rotate. By Colin Basnet, which I bet made a nice video even. Nice, BitMath. So, or, not. So, conditions. Almost. Operation, shift, rotate, not. Neat. Not 65538. I don't know. Looks pretty. One of those building blocks that is gonna make everything possible. same as the 2D and 4D vector sockets, which I already mentioned. No picture. Well, I mean, the sockets look the same. It's just a socket 2 or 4 inputs. Factor and percentage subtypes for the vector sockets, which we've seen already in the blur node. Then this is a visual change that you may not notice. Sound is distorted. Issues with sound. Oh no. How bad does it sound? I did nothing really. Okay, I'm gonna need you to noise gate issues. Bad contact. Is this any better? Because I've plugged and unplugged the microphone. Perfect. Yes, awesome. All right, unplug and plugging it worked. Awesome. Thank you so much for the feedback. Sorry I haven't seen it before. I was too excited looking at this. So the input nodes they look like this, right? You have a collection and then the collection output, object, material, value, for example, and the image, and then the image socket. So wait, no, is it broken again? Oh, but is it broken again? Oh, geez. People, please don't say. Okay. Okay. Noise is back. Oyudo, is that correct? It's perfect at the moment. You are reacting to all comments. Okay. Audio good. It only takes one person even just to say something and then the whole thing derails. Okay. What I was saying is input nodes they look like this, right? You have the string and the string output, then you have you had a socket and the thing itself. And someone on right-click select the website suggested to remove that and make them more compact, just the output straight from the widget. And that has been the case because they now look like this. So this is more compact. Let me show you just a reference. Before, after. Before, after. Nice. More real estate. And it makes sense. Still readable. You still understand what it is. So nice. Small thing. So thanks for the okay, now they are inline. The ones that have sockets, they got gizmos, they're also inline now. So they look super nice. Free real estate. Literally free real estate. Awesome. So thanks to the right-click select proposal, and thanks for Jack for implementing it. What else Jack implemented recently is more real estate, because when Blender doesn't need a specific setting, it can now hide it completely. If a setting is under a menu, like an enum, Blender will now hide it. So when you change something else, Blender changes the UI, will update the UI, will hide the other options based on the selection of the of the menu. And that's something that Blender didn't do before. It would always show, and I think in 4.4 or recently, up until recently, it would just gray them out. But now the logic is that if a setting is under a menu, like it depends on a menu, on an enum, then that will make it hidden. If it depends on a boolean, so on a checkbox, then it will be grayed out. That's the logic for now. So when building your node setups, remember that a menu hides, a boolean grays out. Super nice. Then the viewer node, every time you connect the viewer node, like Control Shift click, it would move next to the position of the whatever it is, and it would be a bit annoying sometimes. Now this is no longer the case if the viewer node is in the view somewhere. So if you have your node set up here and the viewer node is still in the view, it's not gonna move it, jump into the position, only if it's out of view. So it's a small thing, but I wasn't a big fan how the viewer node was jumping around all the time. Okay, now it's when frames, the whole frame updates come. If you go to the code blog, Jack not only coded the entire features, but also made a blog post about it. He actually went ahead and type for discovery, for more people to be used to it. For example, did you know that now the frames can be done by using the F key? Yes, it is inconsistent with other places, but it used to be Control J for joining, and then to remove it was Alt P, and then to rename or name, even add a label to a frame, is F2, which it is still F2 if you want to, but now it's all under one shortcut. So if you are in, let's use the compositor, so say I want to add a frame here, I just press F and Blender will add the frame, and let me add a new name, like a label. Great. So now I have this over here. Another thing you can do is that even when transforming a node, you can press F to get it out of that frame, which is super nice. And then when you mouse over, you can see which is the frame that is going to be connected to. I don't know if you remember, but this didn't used to be the case. So let's say I have, let's add this here and move the frame. And I have another frame here. Now when I move the node and press F, I will detach it. And when I move it over a frame, Blender will highlight that so I can see what it's coming, what is going to be connected. So nice. Another thing that is also super nice is when you have multiple frames. So say I have this node and then I want to add another frame in here, or let's add something else. Let's add a bokeh image inside here, and let's add a new frame inside here. So I press F to make a new frame, my bokeh, and I don't know if you noticed, but the color of the frame inside of the frame has a different value. It's slightly lighter, and if I add another frame inside, it's gonna be darker again. This used to be always the same color, always black in this case for the default frames, and made it possible to see multiple frames inside. So you have to go in and then you have to set a color. So you come here, you set the color to whatever, and then now you have it. Okay. You can still add colors, of course, but Blender will alternate the value when there are colors inside, once inside. Well, is it smart though if I set the same color? No, I guess not, right? Okay. Oh yeah, it does actually. Nice, nice. Next. What else? I think I mentioned everything. Oh, and the labels now are also now, as you can see, they are not covered anymore. They used to be, they used to get on the way. Like they will be chopped, or they will be, yeah, not visible anymore. They are now. What else? Show internal links independent of whether the output is linked. Oh yeah. So you know how when you mute a node, you can see what's within it, what is inside, what is the connection that happens inside. But it will only happen when the node was connected to something. And now, even if the node is not connected to anything, you will see the what happens under the hood when something is muted. So small quality of life improvement to see what's going on. Let's see. Improve drawing with invalid link zones. Yes, this is also super nice. And it's very, very not Blender-like to give these kind of highlights, which I really like it, that we are making these changes to bring more color inside Blender. So this wouldn't work, right? This would be broken. Repeat, something broken here. Now Blender would actually tell you with multiple ways. One, the repeat, in this case for the repeat zone, you will see the outline. Well, first you see the zone itself, right? That it's, or the zone that it's supposed to be. Then when the node link is coming out of it and it fails, it will show you this in red, and the zone itself is gonna be red. So a lot more. This is the same setup. It's just Blender tells you more things now. Nice. Thank you, Blender, for helping me not make mistakes. And thank you, Jack. Improve forward compatibility for unknown interface item types. Also, forward compatibility again is when you make Blender today compatible with a Blender from next year, for example. That has been improved. Then show error when image node cannot be added. Yeah, Blender would just silently fail when you couldn't add an image, for example, which could be when you don't have a setup, right? Blender now tells you, hey, you can't add this node or add this image because you don't have a setup, for example. The search function now works for warnings as well. You can directly search for a warning type like error, warning, info, and so on. Inputs, implicit inputs have been improved, fixing crashes, and yeah, implicit inputs are those kind of inputs that are implicit. No, wait. It are implicit in a way as in, for example, the texture node. When you add an image texture, you don't tell Blender that is a UV to use the UV unwrapping by default, for example, but Blender will use the UV unwrap or Blender UV map if available. Otherwise, it will use a generated map without you having to add a specific node to tell it that. Those are the implicit inputs. And last small one, the context in the viewer path. So in the node editor, the context to the viewer path now has a persistent unique ID, which works better when you have when you rename your modifiers. And it's even better performance. Switching to paint, there is two options. Add toggle support for the brush asset activate. This the toggle support is when you press the same shortcut twice, it will go back to the previous. This is a feature that used to be available. It will go back to the previous brush. So when this option, it's an option per brush even, so it's pretty handy. I think it's in the key map setting. You can make it in the key map, so when you press the same key, you can make the brush toggle back to the previous one. And also related to painting, there is now, you can now duplicate essential brushes into the current file. The essential brushes are the ones that ship with Blender, and now you can duplicate those internally and they will be saved into your current file. Also very nice. Physics, there is one update in physics. It's actually a new property for smoke surface emission. There is now a thickness option that allows you to specify the thickness of the smoke surface So instead of being hard-coded to 1.5, now it is 1.0 by default, and you can specify that in the height in domain grid units of the fluid emission above the mesh surface. Higher values result in emission further away from the mesh surface. If this value and the emitter size are smaller than the domain grid unit, fluid will not be created. Nice. Some more precision, I would guess. Then Python API refactors until we reach some reverts. Yep, sometimes things get added and reverted. That's normal. And in Sculpt, there is a new option called, well, a new old option. So pen tilt has been around for a while in Blender, but it was an experimental option. This is no longer experimental, so everyone gets to enjoy tilt if your pen supports it. So you can use it in brushes such as draw, draw sharp, flatten, fill, scrape, plane, and clay strips. Then another section that we don't see often updated is shape keys. The operators for update and join shape keys into one, like make the update is the one that we saw last week, and the join one is already around for a while. It's called join as shape. It takes all the shape keys, the active shape keys of the selected objects, and then allows you to make them into a new shape, like add it to the current object, active object. In this case, this was using the original mesh, which is not what you would expect, because usually what you see is the evaluated mesh, right, with all the modifiers and like the final thing. So now this will take it into account. It would actually use the evaluated meshes for update and join. Another section that we don't have usually is the spreadsheet. Yep, Blender has a spreadsheet, which is now more spreadsheety. No, wait, that didn't come out right. The spreadsheet, let's add some columns here. So let's say add a bunch of vertex groups. So now I have this beautiful spreadsheet. It's my Excel of Blender. There is so many updates. First, you can now adjust the width of the columns in the spreadsheet. Yay, nice. You can double click to fit to the size. So double click. What is this, Google Sheets? No, it's Blender Sheets. Then you can reorder them. You can say, okay, I want position after the, like in between all my vertex groups for some reason. I want half of vertex groups in one side and one on the other side. You can drag and drop, and this should work. Neat. You can also, well, all the changes that you do here, they will say, there is tooltips now, so you can see if you don't get to read the whole thing, you can mouse over and you get to see the name of the column as a tooltip. So nice. You can actually have smaller, the don't fit, and then you can mouse over. It could be interesting to have an option for automatically like responsive, or like use the entire width if available, or not. Is that stupid? Maybe it is. You know what's not stupid is how this system works, because when you delete a column and add a new one, or select another object, or Blender will save this, will reload the table layout that you had. Super nice. And the context path, you may have noticed that the path to the current object is no longer in the header, is now a panel here in the sub panel in the sidebar. So you can choose the evaluated, original, and viewer options straight from here instead of the menu. And the path to the viewer node, if I had a viewer node, now I have a viewer path. You can see the path here. So geometry nodes viewer. This path, it's also a sub panel, so you can collapse it if you don't need it. and the same for evaluated original, you can collapse this panel and it will show in the, it will be displayed in parentheses inside of the panel name, subpanel name. So quite nice. So you don't lose that much space, and you can also pin it also all from here. Also pretty handy. But the best thing is that this allows for menus to be added here. So now there is a menu which includes the sidebar, toolbar, and area, which is not super useful now, but it will in the future to free up space from the header to add menus. Next, let's jump into the UI. A number of changes in the UI. The horizontal scroll that I already mentioned, that we know and love. Speaking of scrolling, have you ever noticed, I've never noticed until I saw this, that Blender, once you were like, when you're scrolling with the mouse over a, well, let me show you actually here. So, over at tree view. So what is a tree view? We can open Blender. So say I have a armature and then I want to add collection, bone collection. This is a tree view, right? So in Blender, when you run out of, when you have the mouse over the panels, it will scroll the panels. But when it's inside of this, like a UI list, or now called tree view, then it will scroll inside there. Blender now is smart enough, thanks to Jack, that if there's nothing to scroll on, Blender will scroll the view. If there is something to scroll, then it will scroll. There was even a patch which wasn't very well received by feedback, that made it so when you reach the end, you can continue scrolling and it will scroll the rest. Some websites do that. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. I like to scroll all the way down. Like the MX Master also has this that you, I don't know how they call it, hyper scroll or something like that. You scroll and it will keep scrolling. How do you feel about that one? But anyway, now at least it's smart enough. So when there is nothing to scroll, it will scroll the view. Neat. Next. Oh, speaking of tree views, Blender now allows you, well, drag and dropping now allows you to drag and drop in the empty area. So if you drag an item beyond the last, like in the empty section below the tree view, Blender will now drop it to the end of the tree. Before, it will just not let you do anything. It's very unfriendly in that case. It will just give an error, basically. It should not let you, like, show you the mouse, the indicator that it cannot drag. So, super nice. Add-on, also known as Blendify, has made improvements to the shading layout popover. The changes are very subtle, you may not notice, but on the left is how it used to be, and now this is how it is. You may remember that the selector on top here was cut off for some reason. Not anymore, and it doesn't make sense that it's cut off because these three options control everything underneath here. So they should be hierarchical. This makes more sense. This is actually very old. Let me see the new one. Wait. No, this is not the new one. Because it doesn't have... This is the new one, okay. Okay, there you go. So this is the new one. This is my screenshot. That's how I know. This is add-ons, but I switched it because it was the other way around. The world is now connected to it. Instead of being separate, floating around, now it's connected now to this rotation. Another big one is that the option for single color is now called custom color, which is a bit more clear. It's a single color, but you know, it's single doesn't say much. Now it's custom. And the order of these options are also now consistent in the two modes. So you have material object random, theme for the wireframe, object random, and the order makes more sense now how it used to be. And the same for the background. It used to be theme, world, viewport. But viewport didn't make any sense because it is the viewport. World is also viewport, theme is also viewport. So now it's called custom. So you override the viewport. Next. The Gizmo 3D wire is, the action zone is now slightly bigger, so it's easier to click on it. Oh, this one. It's so small, but I think you're gonna love it because I missed it. And when Campbell implemented it, I was like, I don't know how I could live without it. You know when you render that you have slots, right? Let's do smaller render. So you know how you have these beautiful slots where you can add your render. You can render to one specific slot. This shouldn't be hypercase, but anyways, doesn't that ever happen to you that you forget, or it's just me that I forgot which one was which? Because you know the shortcut J that allows you to alternate between two slots. Well, sometimes I would go back and forth between two renders just to see which one was more noisy, and then I forget which one was the active slot. So I would press F12 in the slot 2, and then you just don't know anymore. Like, there's no way to know which one is the latest render that you did until now. When you click on the drop down, you will see that the slot that has the current frame is actually showing the icon. So you know that if you're in slot 1, but slot 2 is the one with the icon, the render result icon, then it's like, ah, this is the actual one. So I go to 6, render again, and the icon for render result is here. The second also thing that you may have noticed is that there are these dots. This means that the icon, that the slot is used. There is content in there. It's not empty, but it's not the final render, the one that you just did. These few things are already so nice. I keep forgetting which slots I used and which ones I didn't. The feature is not complete yet, I think, because it would be nice to expose this in the render slots here. But unfortunately, there is no way at the moment how to do it. Like apparently it's more involved. I suggested it, but it's not involved. It's not easy to do. But now, not bad here. Maybe it's up to the challenge. just saying it. Anyway, the next feature is, oh, it's just a small change in cycles. The light setting, some of the advanced settings in cycles have been moved to the settings panel, similar to the material settings panel, to make room for 3 new options that will be added in the following commits. Neat. So I guess these are the options that we already discussed before, the lights, the normalize, and the other ones. And last but not least, in terms of UI, Damien Picard has added or improved these messages, which is super nice. Some of the issues were reported by Tamar Mebonia, and yeah, super nice to have people looking at the typos and how to make text more readable for everyone. Next, USD. 2 changes. 1, support for text object during export. Similar to the existing Metaball or the other exporters, now Blender converts text objects to meshes on export. Nice. On USD. And also add support for USD prim var reader type in materials. This adds support for these templates to both import and export. They are used by several USD test assets, and support here represents the last major piece of the USD preview surface spec to be implemented. That's saying a lot. Yeah. Happy to see this. Are you using USD in at your job, for example, if you use Blender on your setups? Okay, the last two changes are related to the video sequence editor, and the big one that I almost named this episode after because it's so big is by Adas, and it's a new cache implementation. So caching in the sequencer has for the longest time been a bit all over the place. It's been very hard to code for it, but also to see in action. Like, okay, what caching is working? There were so many levels of cache, and that has all been refactored. So there is raw and final cache. Bam. And now it actually tells you, when you have developer extras, it tells you what is the size of that in the panel, which is also nice. The cache also should be faster in terms of performance compared to how it used to be. So, for example, the Doom test case, of course, Doom, that was running at 3 frames per second, around 3.7 frames per second, now runs at 16 frames per second. So, almost at 60 milliseconds per frame. So, real time, I would say. You can almost play it. Most of the cost now on the dependency graph copy of the scene. So the limit has been reached for what the sequencer can do, and then dependency graph should take over the bottleneck. So nice. I don't know if you've read the running Doom in the video sequence editor, but you can actually. Yeah, so you have a command, and these are all strips that get the color of the pixel of the Doom. This is how real developers test things. You should check it out. Okay, cool. And next. The last change is by John. It has to do with workflow. So let's see. Now that handles are effectively hidden with the tweak handles option, handle selection for multiple strips is quite unintuitive, and that's correct. It is expected that after selecting a group of strips, the user will be able to select all of their handles. That wasn't the case, even if they are not connected, consistent with other and non-linear editors, the video editors. This patch enables that behavior by propagating the handle selection to all the selected strips if the tweak handle options is on. So in this case, you change one and it will select the others. So if you have that option on, it behaves the same way. So if you select all the nodes, you will be able to adjust it in the how would you expect it to work. Do you use this option, the tweak handle option? Let me show you what I mean. So if you are in the video editor and you add a color strip, maybe, there is an option in the preferences that allows you to bring back how this used to be in the video sequencer editor in the previous version, before the redesign that we did in, what was it, 4.0? Anyway, this bit. This is how it used to be. You just mouse over and then you adjust it. It didn't even have like a mouse, like changing the cursor on mouse over. And it's also not very flexible because you cannot do this very easily as you can when you don't have the tweak handles. So with this option that is on by default, now Blender shows you on mouse over the cursor change, and you can do these operations where you put the mouse in between these two strips and you adjust them immediately. So I think maybe for Blender 5 would be a good idea to get rid of the old option, which is inferior in many ways, and it makes the code a mess as well. So it actually gets on the way of adding other features, because every transform operation or handle feature that you want to add has to be compatible with these two modes. So what do you think? Would you miss being able to have these options? And that is all. Actually, there's no more Vulkan, and that's it. Actually, that was everything new in Blender today. Let's see if there is any questions in the survey result. There is 2 questions, so let's see. Oh, very short ones. Let's see. 1. Hex Bob says, "Hola Pablo, really great to see Blender today. Back again after the hiatus. I've been trying to follow the development of the physics simulation tools in Geometry Nodes, reading some of the weekly reports by Lucas and the posts by Jack on DevTalk. Sounds like great progress is being made with solvers behind the scenes. I'm just wondering if you knew when more official announcements will be made about it." Well, anything that is by Lucas and Jack is official. They are official employees by Blender Foundation. They work for Blender. Lucas works here at the HQ, and Jack works remote, but he's one of the main developers. So everything that they do is official. You mean announcement as in when is it ready? It's ready when it's ready. There is a new project from Blender Studio that will try to use some of these physics. And I think you can read on the, where is it, in the code blog? Code blog in the project's updates. Right, so we look at Studio. Yeah, aerodynamics. The plan is to use the upcoming Blender Studio project, currently unnamed but focused on a facial rig, as his use case to at least to develop it as an experimental feature. So yeah, that's a focus, to use a Blender Studio project to test it out. But anything that they do is official, as in they work for Blender. So if they post on like weekly updates or reports by them, it's a Blender thing. So Nana But says, "I'm personally very upset about the radiometric unit removal, as we can read. I know it's still the same, but I feel a little lost without it. Sunlight in space above Atmo is..." Okay, I'm not going to get into details because I'm not skilled enough to even... So what is it? I agree, for many people it is confusing, but it's just like removing metric units because Americans aren't used to metric. Just like other scalars, you should be able to change the units if you prefer different ones. As a VFX, I mean, all this just because it doesn't show the unit next to it. But wouldn't it make sense to just have units separately and then compute the final result in some way? The next topic is: the survey was odd. I do VFX for advertisement, film, and animation. I do answer I use Blender for film and animation, advertisement, or VFX. Yes, you do. This was a multi-select. You could select multiple things. You didn't have to choose one. Primary use case is important, but you need to split generalist roles. Something like when you work with Blender, what do you use it for the most? Okay, that's interesting feedback. Maybe please leave this feedback in the post. At the end of the survey, Blender and .blender.org, there is "let us know if you spot interesting trends," data points. So maybe give the feedback there, because it might get lost here in Blender Today and it's better there. Also, so Francesco reads it. Also, considering campaigning for the data block editor, a place to handle packing, unpacking, deleting data, bulk, adding fake users, browsing assets to drag into other editors, keep diving into internal data blocks. there is an external media browser, but things like Unreal, Godot, After Effects, Resolve all have internal file browsers. Am I out of line for wanting this? Wait, what? A data block editor. But is that like a file browser? Blender used to have a file browser that would let you browse the file, like the same way you do append when you go inside of a blend file and you append data blocks. Same way. Blender used to have an editor for that. It was crazy. When was that? 2.4, I think. When you used to have an oops, remember the Blender oops editor? It's the object-oriented programming. There, this used to be amazing. So here it is. Yeah, this was in an editor on its own that later became the outliner. It was replaced by it, but it will show you the connection between the data blocks. That's super nice. So if you are interested in bringing up something like that, please. It was so nice, and it was also great for teaching, because you could, for example, we have multiple objects sharing the same data block. You could show it, you could see it, you could show like multiple objects, and they all connected to one data block, which is connected to one texture, one material, which is connected to one texture. It was so easy to explain the connection between the data blocks that way. I bet that if anyone will come up with this, it would be well received. I would probably do it myself. Would you? Hi, Dalai is just dropping by. Dalai, would you be opposed? Thank you for coming. By the way, you're not in screen.
Always a pleasure.
But I was just talking about the oops editor.
249.
Yeah, no, 232 in this screenshot, even
Yeah.
older. And there was a suggestion of having a data block editor, like a place where you can handle packing, unpacking, deleting, bulk, adding, browsing. I know sometimes you want to see if there's any images that are linked or not, for example. So, is there a place in Blender in the future for data block editor?
We talked about that, no? To bring back the oops,
Yeah.
the oops space. Maybe not as an editor, but at least as a, not a place to edit the relations, but at least to debug. Right now it's super hard to know who is using that texture. You can use via Python, you get a way to list all the users and how they apply it to and who is using them, but not really, there's no way to visualize these. Or again, ideally editing as well. Editing becomes a bigger UX challenge, but visualizing relationships, it's we could do in the past. It doesn't, I don't know, bring back the good old days.
I would love it. I would love it. It was so clear, so easy to see. So thank you. Now we have the approval from the product manager at Blender.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
We have product approval. So now we can move on. Anyways, thanks, Dalai. Sorry for stopping you there. Hi. We have people visiting the studio. By the way, I don't know if you know, you can visit the studio if you let know in advance. And I happened to be with the door open today. I usually close the door, but there was no one in this floor today next to my office, so I have people coming over. Hey, nice. Okay, that was it. I hope this covers your question, and I hope you all had a great show today. Nearly 2 hours, even though we had less to cover, but we did go through the survey and the conference. Please, if you have any presentations planned for the conference, make sure to submit it. And if you plan to visit the Blender conference, there are still tickets available in conference.blender.org. So drop by. If you have a short film that you want to present at the Susanna Awards, also there is the open submission for that too. Then the studio website, if you want to support the studio and play the latest video game made in Blender, released in Godot as a playable game since 2008, when we had the previous Blender game, not made with the Blender game engine, unfortunately, but Godot, still open source, cool people. Then that's it. That is it. I hope you had a good show. I did. got a link. What for? What survey? Oh, the survey. I already survey.blender.org. That those are the results of the survey from last year. So keep an eye for the survey 2025. That we plan to do, I think, around the same time, maybe October. Last year was right before the conference. This would be right after the conference, perhaps. Although it should be way more straightforward because we already have the experience from this survey. But this survey is called the feedback survey. Would you be up for sharing? I don't know if you're familiar with Steam, the Steam survey, the hardware survey. So they every few months or every year or every now and then they have this survey that they open. You just open Steam and then you have a message that says, "Hey, would you like to submit your hardware survey?" And then you can see what is going to be submitted. And I do that all the time. I always share because I think it's valuable for them to know, especially because as a Linux user, then I want to show them that they're Linux user. We are here. There are dozens of them, and actually there is millions of them now because of Steam OS, which it's proven to be faster than Windows 11 in some handhelds. But yes, those surveys I really like. Would you be up for sharing that kind of information in the shape of a add-on? So it would be of very, very opt-in. You will have to go to the extension website, look for the extension, and then turn it on, for example. So it is really, really opt-in. And then once it's on, you would maybe press a button. It will tell you all the info that's going to submit. For example, it can say that you are using 2 monitors and a pen and a pen tablet from a brand that nobody knows and has issues. And then it's like, okay, actually we know. Or we can also learn what is your user interface, its size. Are you in Full HD? Maybe most people are in 720p and we don't know. And maybe Blender is bad for them, as in the UI it's not readable. Or I don't know, all those things. Would you be up for that? It should be very opt-in. These are not kind of metrics. We're not gonna go the Audacity way of, or even Firefox. All good with Firefox, but last time I tried it, it had by default turned on sharing like analytics to them. I know they're good people, I guess. It's just don't make it default. Do not make it default. At this day and age, if you're an open source project, you gotta be the example. So it will be very valuable for Blender to have this kind of information, to know which hardware are you using, especially for developers to debug which driver versions are used the most, which graphics cards are used the most, and yeah, there's a lot of value in that. But it should be opt-in, very opt-in. Anyways, that being said, I would love to know if you are up for it, because we named this survey the feedback survey, and potentially we could have the hardware survey, the config survey. Maybe we have a survey that you share your user preferences, not the blend file, because that can contain, but your actual preferences, as in which settings do you turn on the most? As everybody in the world turns on loop tools, probably yes. Should we just include loop tools inside Blender? Or everybody uses right-click select, and we're here fighting the system. I know it's not the case. I really know that. But maybe, who knows? Who are using? Maybe there's lots of people using the Blender 2.7 key map, and we don't know, and we're not maintaining it. There was on right-click select recently a post, a right-click select proposal to fix some issues in the 2.7 key map. But that shouldn't be in a proposal. That should be a bug report, because the 2.7 key map is still official in Blender. But maybe with this, I don't know, with this survey, we know that we find out that actually 5 people are using it, or actually thousands of people are using it. We need to put more resources in there. Anyways, that is all. I hope you are having a good time, a good summer or winter, whatever you are. It's not actually technically summer yet, or it's just especially not here. But I'm gonna see you again. Next time is gonna be, let's see. So we are the 28th of, the 28th of May, which means next week, this time, 4.5 beta will be out. You will see the new splash screen, and there will be 2 new splash screens actually. One for 4.5 LTS beta and one for 5.0 main. So the one that we update every major release. So every 2 years we update a screenshot. There will be a new one, and I bet it's gonna be very cute and very fitting for the southern hemisphere. Cold winter, but still nice and fun. You may have an idea what I'm talking about. The next time we'll see each other, though, will be on the 11th of June. Wow. Time flies when you have fun. We'll be right into, wow, that will be like a week after 5.0 alpha starts. What will we see? Will Blender be entirely different? Of course not. Open source is fast sometimes, others not so much. That being said, I hope you had a great time. I did. So let's do it again in 2 weeks, more or less. Same place, same times, for another episode of Blender Today Live. I hope it wasn't too loud. Thanks everyone. I had a great time. See you soon.